Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of House of the Empire. We're just a couple of weeks removed from A Night of the Seven Kingdoms hitting its finale. We've had a little bit of time to digest it, and this evening's episode is going to be talking about it in its entirety instead of episode by episode, which is what we had been doing in the past. We're also going to be looking at the pros and cons of a couple of different pieces of different universes and whether a movie or a show would be of a greater benefit to it at a certain juncture in their franchise's history. Some rapid fire news from the galaxy far, far away, plus a little bit of info from a Game of Thrones recent alumni that is now part of Star Wars Starfighter. All that and more on tonight's episode. I'm Zach, and I'm joined by a host of some really great guys. We'll kick it off around the horn with Randy. How's your Monday treating you? You said backstage that it was kind of a crazy Monday, but hopefully we get to land the plane a little bit nicer tonight. And you're muted.
That's on me. 1 second. He had feedback during the intro.
Ah,
My fat fingers are having trouble unmuting them. All right, fat fingers now benched. My bad.
That's funny because I had muted myself, so the fact that there was feedback on top of being muted, that's kind of crazy. Let's just say that between not working till 7 o'clock at night and
that's it right there. That's it.
and the transmission in my car taking a shit, yeah, it's been a great fan-fucking-tastic Monday. So hopefully this will take my mind off some stuff, and I'm always down to talk some Star Wars, so it should be fun.
Yeah, it's a pretty loaded episode. I'm for considering we kind of threw these notes together this morning, or Sean did rather, to have the type of content that we do is pretty exciting. So, um, Sean, a busted transmission is the one to beat. What do you got for a crappy Monday?
Go to Dustin. Mouthful.
Okay, mouthful of dick.
How do I follow up that? My night is going much better than a mouthful of dick, for sure. No, it's a Monday. The days are going by fast. I have about a month left until the newest edition, the little one, comes. So getting ready, getting the house prepped and all the things that I need, and realizing what am I doing going back to stage one. So the days are just flying by, but I'm doing all right. It's glad to be here. It'll be nice to talk some Westeros, Star Wars. Always a good way to end a Monday.
There's a little bit of Halloween in there too, if we're able to squeeze it in. So we've got a pretty channel-worthy discussion, considering all of the Game of Thrones shows that have transpired here over the years, and how it all originated with Star Wars Wastelands, and then some of the most viewed content on the channel has always been pertaining to the Halloween universe. We get to touch all the bases this evening, so that's pretty exciting. Sean, have you swallowed yet?
Yes, I have in its entirety. No, wasn't dick, but rather heart medication. So I took a look at the time, and it was about an hour and a half past when I should have taken it. So had to get that done. Randy, I have some good news for you. Okay, so let's forget about the bad news for a second and indulge in this good news. And no, it's not dick. We don't have to talk about Scream 7 tonight, which is a win for us all.
Yeah, based on your comments from the weekend alone, I was just like, oh, you poor hapless bastard, having to deal with that again.
Oh, no, I didn't. He forgot about his request.
You shut it down.
No, he just didn't bring it back up again. So dodged a bullet there.
And you didn't bother to. So everybody wins.
Evil dies tonight.
He got to play some Gears of War with myself and Randy and his uncle and some other people, Johnny as well. And didn't ask about Scream 7 again, thankfully.
And how'd he do? Did he hold his own?
We didn't do so well as a team, but he had fun. That's what counts.
He played better than me.
That's what losers say. No, I'm just kidding. I've only played it like twice, so.
Well, we lost like 7 maps in a row before winning, so yeah.
Well, we're all winners tonight because we get to talk about some really cool shit. Let's kick it off with kind of a retrospective of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. That's kind of the big topic. We'll probably spend a solid 20, maybe 30 minutes on it at the most. It's going to be kind of an abbreviated episode tonight, so we're not going to beat on this dead horse necessarily, but I am curious because this is something that we have done in previous Westeros discussions. Is how does the program sit with you over time? The initial impressions are one thing, but then, what kind of takeaways did we have? What kind of storylines did we appreciate? Did we not care for? What kind of embellishments were okay? What kind of, storylines were probably given too much attention or too little, that kind of thing. Not as much to dissect just because it's 6 episodes. They're all about a half an hour. And so, hopefully we won't have to touch on it too terribly much, but I felt it was important considering we've done this for House of the Dragon. We did it for Game of Thrones season 8. What are our impressions from season 1 now that it's completely finished? Randy, what are your thoughts on season 1 as a whole now?
It was definitely not what I expected, but of course, going in blind, never reading the material, really just it gave that fresh outlook to where I was like, okay, this is very different, and it made me feel like it was something we didn't normally get to see. We had, like, when it comes to House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, there's always that dark, depressing nature at times. It's always someone trying to one up someone else, even though someone might be trying to do good. Where with this, we have someone who is genuinely good and doing everything he can to become a true knight in a way here. And I liked the character arc. I liked how we get to see how naive and innocent he really was, and then he finally got to see more of that seedy underbelly, that the way people just hold themselves and backstab each other, and we got to see him grow from that. We got to see his character develop a little bit more to where, yes, he's still going to have that be honor bound, but he actually has now that experience of, okay, I need to be careful who I trust. I mean, granted, we'll see how that translates into the next season, but overall, it was a fun time. There were some times it dragged on a little bit, but I get it. But that's part of the problem with it. That's why it's not like a amazing season 1, because some of the stuff just felt like, even though it added to the story, it just didn't add to. It just kind of slowed things down. And when you only got half an hour to fill and only 6 episodes, you don't want to just have it feel like it's dragging on a little bit. And it only happened in a few instances. It wasn't the entire time, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to just kind of going back and binging it as a whole, just to kind of see how it feels without having to stop and wait a week. So I'm pretty sure I'll probably enjoy it a lot more that way, because I feel like it really did feel like just a movie that they split up into 6 episodes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a consensus that we've had in our group chat, is that this might be one of the more bingeable entrances in the Game of Thrones universe, just because it feels like it should have been a movie to begin with. And this is kind of in the vein of some of the other discussion topics that we've got. So, Sean, we've got other discussion topics about, Aegon versus like an Aegon movie versus an Aegon show. Do you think A Night of the Seven Kingdoms would have benefited more greatly, would have been like more of a crowd pleaser if they had been able to put it into, say, a 3-hour movie and just released it all at once?
Yeah, I mean, I think that had they kept it around 3 hours, they would have been fine. But if they would have chopped it up anymore and gone down to like 220 or something for a movie, and I'm talking like a straight to HBO movie, no, I don't think this thing works as like a theatrical release that would have put butts in seats, which we'll obviously talk about in terms of Aegon the Conqueror and Halloween here in a bit. But um, I'd have to really binge it all to like really have a better idea. But yeah, I mean, some of the episodes are grossly short, and not that they weren't enjoyable, they were, but like I think recency bias is a big thing with Westeros. I mean, it's a big thing across all fandom, but really with Westeros too. And I've had some time to think about this because we've known about for 2 weeks roughly that this is going to be tonight's show topic. And so I won't give you my whole list, but to provide some clarity here, there are 11 seasons of Westeros TV, 8 of Game of Thrones, 2 of House of the Dragon, 1 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And this one for me ranks 10th. And it was damn near 11th. I had to think real hard on if it should be 11th. And that's not a knock, by the way, on any of the 11 seasons, because I would take all 11 seasons of Westeros over many other seasons of most TV shows. I had House of the Dragon season 2 as 11th, simply because there were some really big expectations that weren't hit and some false marketing, which I never stand for. But then you look at House of the Dragon season 1, and like it's not as simple as just like Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 8 or one to 8, because they're not. I have House of the Dragon season 1 way high on my list in terms of 11 Westeros seasons of TV. I just think some people would hear that and go, "Oh, you had a 10 of 11. That's not good." No, it is. But I think the big thing here is it's a different style of show, which is fine. But if you were the head of HBO, Zach, and you came to me, a fan, and said, "Okay, so now you got your first season of this, but you're going to have to wait 2 years to get another season," that wouldn't pass the sniff test for me. This is not a wait 2 or 2.5 years to see another season of this, which is not their intent, by the way. They intend to turn this thing around once a year. And the only thing they're guaranteed is season 2. They're not guaranteed anything past season 2 at this point. But yeah, as a once a year show, as a stopgap to whatever the main show is going at that time, I think it's a fine add-on piece.
I can't help but wondering if that's what its original intent was. Just because there are many jokes, particularly in the first 2 or 3 episodes, that kind of made me feel like they knew what they were trying to be, and they kind of leaned into it, rather than try to avoid it. Duncan getting lost in the castle, bumping his head on door frames, taking a massive shit behind a tree, and us seeing the splatter go everywhere. Like they knew what they were doing. Everything that was done in there was very intentional, and it was. I don't think it was ever meant to be House of the Dragon. I don't think it was ever meant to be Game of Thrones. Um, so I don't blame it being in a 10 out of 11 spot. Um, but it's interesting how a lot of times recency bias will put things very high on a list, and maybe in some certain cases recency bias puts it on a lower end as well. And this may be one of those cases. Dustin, where do you land on this now that we've had some time to look back on it, to think on it, to process it? Do you feel like letting it digest puts it in higher favor or lower favor with you now?
It's hard because I have not watched House of the Dragon season 1 or 2. That is on my list to do. So just going based off of Game of Thrones, and we kind of knew I mean, they did set the expectation that this was going to be a lower budget. This is going to be. It's hard because you're only going to get comparisons to to other material that's out for Westeros, right? So that's all you can compare it to. And as far as the source material, it's kind of hard to put up, a novella like this up against the books that are such detail, like where you get all of the drama, all of the stuff that goes on, especially in the first 7 seasons, even parts of season 8. It's kind of hard to top that, and I think that they knew they weren't going to be able to do that, and I don't think that was the purpose of this show. Was like, hey, let's put something out there that's different and see if there is an opportunity for us to take Game of Thrones content into a different direction and make it fit into a different type of, the 30-minute show, kind of like, hey, this is an adventure off on this. Now they're planning to make more. I wouldn't say it's, my favorite. I would say, like, I think all of the Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 8 are better overall than this, but I think those seasons were, for the most part, longer. The episodes were longer. There's a lot more stuff going on in them. It's kind of hard to compare it to that. As it sits, did it do what I think it needed to do? I am interested in seeing another season of it. I think that there were parts that were very good, and there were some parts that were just that dragged a little bit, and that's kind of hard when you only have set amount of episodes that are 30-ish minutes. You need all of it to really hit, and I think for the most part it did. I liked the story they told. Part of me is like, kind of like, they got in, they told the story they wanted to tell based on the novella. Based on what you're saying, it's pretty true to how the novella goes. So the only caveat is, like, do I think this can sustain 7 or 8 seasons? No, I don't. I really don't. I think this would be like, okay, they're going to do a second season, maybe a third, and then end it. But I think overall, with the recency bias, like the scene with, the battle scene, it was great. But like, that for this show was the highlight of the season for me. But I still think it's probably my least favorite. And as Sean said, my least favorite of the Game of Thrones content. But as Sean said, that's still very good. And I would still watch this over a lot of what's out there now. As far as Marvel content, Star Wars content, I would still put this up above a lot of that. So overall, I still enjoyed the show. I do want to watch it through all the way from start to finish, and in 2 sittings, just to kind of get a feel for it. But yeah, I think it did what it needed to do, and I still enjoyed it overall.
Has anybody here watched the extended Lord of the Rings?
Yes, I have.
I have not.
I have, yep.
So the extended editions go approximately 4 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Per film.
Per movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Per movie. I just did a little adding up. That's why my eyes were kind of darting here and there. I was trying to add the individual run times of each episode, and they come out to 208 minutes roughly. So that's just under 3.5 hours. So if you all can sit through the extended Lord of the Rings, you might be able to get it in one sitting if you really, really tried. And apparently I just scared Dustin away. He didn't want to hear that. It's like, nah, don't tell me that shit. I don't want to watch this.
That was weird. I disappeared. Now I'm back.
This app, this platform that we use is very, very glitchy.
Must be made by the same people that made Screen 7.
Okay. Can you go on public record? Are you willing to go on public record and say what you would rather watch instead of watch Scream 7 again?
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question in reply to your question. Did you ever watch that little video review I sent of Scream 7?
I guess I didn't. You mentioned it in that video?
We got you covered.
It's time for airing of the grievances. And again, let me give you guys some warning. I'm going to go into spoilery detail on this. You know why? Because none of you should go see this thing. None of you. I would rather jack off with sandpaper. No. I would rather watch Madam Web again. What? No. I would rather do a marathon of Madam Web, Morbius, and Kraven the Hunter than ever watch this piece of garbage again.
That about covers it. And if you think he's exaggerating, he's not.
You know, it's...
Oh, Zach didn't hear it last week. I went on record saying...
Oh, you did?
I would rather watch Zombies, us do a live watch party of Zombies or other movies of that nature than ever be put through that shit.
Considering he was talking about jacking off with sandpaper and then he talked about Madam Web, I really thought his next comment was going to be, I would rather jack off to Madam Web with sandpaper or something like that. I was like, where you go with this, buddy? I don't know if I want to know, but dude, I know y'all shit on it. I've got a soft spot in my heart for that movie. I think Zombies had a ton of potential and just didn't have enough of the budget. I think if you make that movie with like an actual recognizable cast or even certain B-list actors that you're like, oh yeah, I've heard that name before, instead of just like a high school acting troupe on like a $30,000-$40,000 budget, I think it could have been something. But I digress. But I appreciate you going on the record saying as much. That's fantastic. Would we spend the 3.5 hours to actually binge this show, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, in its entirety? Is it binge worthy? Yes or no, Randy?
I mean, I believe it is. I feel that it may flow better because when you're getting these pauses on like really short episodes, whether you like say watching anime or watching your weekly show or whatever, having that week wait time, kind of detracts from what you're feeling at the time. So if you have a nice 3.5 hour binge, you can at least stay present, and those emotions, maybe you feel like you feel something different than you would have waiting a week. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth it just because it could be a different experience altogether, and you may enjoy it even more, or you may enjoy it less. But at least if you do it that way, you'll know, whether or not you truly enjoy it for what it is, or if it really is because it's set in the set in the world of Game of Thrones.
Sean, 10th out of 11. I know you're really busy and your time is valuable right now. Do you feel like this season is binge worthy?
I hate this app. I fucking hate this app. So I guess I don't even know what the actual runtime is, right? Because if you take away the beginning, the HBO part at the beginning, and the previously on, and the long credits that were Disney Plus like length, I'm not convinced the show is all that long. And I think, yeah, I could sit through it in one watch. And dare I say, I mean, as is, yes, I would sit through it in one watch. But I think that during, what is it, episode 5, where we spend 10 minutes, 12 minutes in the past that's not in the novella, as you told us, I think that it would be even more watchable, to be honest. I really don't think we needed to do that. But I do think it is. Again, though, I stress as like an HBO original. I don't think this is something that would have done well in cinemas.
Well, I mean, I'll give a relevant / recent example. I finally got around to watching the War of the Rohirrim, and I I think that should have been a streaming original. Like, it was good. I don't think it was movie theater good, personally. And the IMDb results give it like a 6.7 out of 10 or something like that. So, like, just barely movie worthy. But truth be told, I would say since maybe even the last Hobbit movie, fantasy has not done super well at the box office. Whether it's fantasy based on a game or fantasy based on a franchise or what have you, I
I
would
hope people
venture
remember this take for the next topic because I think you're spot on.
I would venture to say that just fantasy as a genre has not boded well in the public box office recently. So, yes, I'm with you. A home box office, an HBO film, it's fine because it's made by HBO. That's fine. Make that one of the exclusive things to release to your app. But no, I don't know if I'm going to sit through it in a movie theater either. But that's just me. Dustin, what about you? Binge worthy? Yes or no?
Yeah, I think it's binge worthy for sure. I think, I think it's just the fact that the episodes are short enough to where you can get through this pretty quickly. I think it, is set up perfectly for that. Where you could just sit down in an afternoon and put it on and watch all the episodes. If you skip through the intro and the credits, all that stuff, depending on how long that stuff is, you get through it pretty quickly. I think this show would actually benefit from just going through it from one episode to the next and just seeing a quick, again, like, I think it's almost like watching a movie and you can get a quick sense of everything all at once. It'll actually be interesting to do that just to see if it helps or detracts from what they're doing. Like, does it go too fast? We had a week to digest each episode, so taking the time to just go through it all in one shot, it'd be interesting to see if someone watches that the first time that way, if it makes a big difference on their opinion of it. I think it's definitely bingeable, just for the fact of the shorter episodes and the amount of episodes, so it lends itself well to that. And I think each episode leads into the next pretty well enough to where you can really just get a quick sense of what they're trying to do and be caught up pretty quick. So, and that can't be said for other Game of Thrones content where it's like you need to invest a lot of time to do something like that. So I think it's worth doing for sure.
Well, there you have it, folks. In spite of what mixed thoughts we may have, we all say that it's worth a shot trying to binge it. So do with that information as you will. There's only 6 to choose from, but in under a minute, I want to ask, what is your favorite episode and why? I'm going to give you a second to think about it and kind of recap it for you. Episode 1 is the Hedge Knight, where we see Sir Duncan and Egg meeting each other for the first time. And it ends with them seeing a shooting star, which Egg believes will bring good luck. Second episode is Hard Salt Beef, where he is trying to find a sponsor and recounting some tales of Sir Arlen. They encounter the princes when they arrive, and he asks the Targaryens to vouch for him, and he assists Lord Lionel in a game of tug of war and has to sell his horse in order to be able to pay for his rented armor. Episode 3 is The Squire. While Dunk is sleeping, Egg trains Thunder to prepare himself for the tournament. The what is his name? Plumber suggests a rigged joust in order to help the nobles try to recoup some of the money that they've lost. And Dunk, being as honorable as he is not a super fan of that. And at the very end, Egg reveals himself to be the crown prince, or one of the princes. He'll become the crown prince. Episode 4 is titled Seven, where he is facing the repercussions for attacking Egg's older brother, Arion. And he demands a trial by combat, and Arion counters with a trial by 7. And the rest of the episode is surrounded around trying to gather enough people to actually fight for him in the trial of 7. And the big surprise at the very end is that the Hand of the King himself declares that he will fight for Duncan against his family. Episode 5 is In the Name of the Mother. It's the big joust, the big battle, the big fight, and of course, the big moment that happens at the very end that I think surprised most people who hadn't read the novella. And then the finale, episode 6, is The Morrow, where you're trying to deal with those repercussions and figure out how to live with yourself. Maker asks Duncan to take Aegon as his squire, and it's believed that Egg runs away with Dunk, excuse me, as a means of becoming his squire and learning what it means to be a knight of the Seven Kingdoms. So, the Hedge Knight, Hard Salt Beef, the Squire, 7, In the Name of the Mother, and The Morrow. Randy, a minute or less, favorite episode and why?
So I'm actually going to go with 7 just because we just get to see the repercussions, like you said, the repercussions of what happened, but also the surprise we get at the end. Having the Hand join him, like that emotional moment of just that, seeing that relief just wash over him. Like, I feel like it was probably one of the more emotional points in the entire series. And usually if you get a response like that, that's usually good enough for me to make it like one of my favorite episodes, getting that emotional response.
It's good when a show is evocative and resonates. Sean, favorite episode, minute or less?
I'm going with 7. I know the popular pick for, if you were to ask most fans, they're probably going to say 5, but 7 felt the most like Game of Thrones to me. In tone, in setting, in even color grading. As Randy said, having to deal with the repercussions of the end of episode 3 all through it. You get a little bit of the politics in there, the inner family turmoil with the Targaryens, and then the moment at the end where the Hand of the King stands up for Dunk is big, and the use of the Game of Thrones theme in that moment as well. For me, it's 7.
Dustin, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with Sean. I think 7 is one of the better episodes. I think, I think in the episode we get the revelation that Egg's really Aegon Targaryen. The all the stuff with the with the Targaryens and the kind of discussion of some of the bigger stuff that's happening in Westeros. And then I think, we also get the brother. He basically is like, hey, like, I messed up and I'm going to fall from my horse and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to basically throw this match for you. And we kind of get to see some of Dunk's wrath. And then, as Sean said, I think it was great to see the Hand of the King stand up and basically be like, yeah, my nephew is an ass and I'm going to fight for you because, you seem like a good person. So I think it definitely hit a lot of those main points, and there was so much more to the world around it, not just Egg and Dunk. So I think 7 is definitely my favorite episode.
I wish I could give it a clean sweep. I wish. But for me, I think it's actually a tie between 2 and 5. Hard Salt Beef and In the Name of the Mother. In spite of the sequence that is not in the novella, I think everything else helps make up for it. I think the fighting is very much a compartmentalized rendition of what true knightly jousting looked like back in the day. The types of fighting and how raw and energetic and passionate it was very evocative for me. And it was very, very entertaining to watch, especially since we're seeing a lot through Duncan's POV, to actually put our eyes inside the visor. I remember my wife said, "How in the fuck do people fight like this? Like, you can barely see anything. And if they're lucky enough to get their lance or their sword through there, you're basically dead because, like, it has direct access to your brain, not just your eye." And so the type of fighting that takes place in that episode is very raw. It's very real. It's very realistic, and I enjoyed that a lot. And what's funny is I give a lot of grace to episode 5 in spite of its deviations, and the reason I like number 2 is because there are hardly any deviations. I would say episode 2, Hard Salt Beef, is the most accurate representation of the content from the novella that we get in the whole show. From talking to the Targaryens to getting his own coat of arms from Tansel to visiting the armorer Steely Pate, like basically everything that takes place in that episode takes place in the novella in the exact same sequence. So it was kind of cool to see it unfold in such an exact fashion. Sorry, that was a little longer than a minute. I won't give as much of an answer for the next question. Favorite moment? It could be from the episode that you chose, or it could be from another episode. But a sequence, a scene, a moment that transpired that stood out to you more than others. We'll go counterclockwise, and Dustin, you can kick us off this time.
Man, favorite moment. I would probably have to go with I mean, it's kind of an easy one, but I like the hint at Aegon when they're talking to the what is she, like the fortune teller, and they're just walking by
on the street.
Yeah. And you just think it's just this really, low key, supposed to be, oh, they're just gonna have this conversation, and then she drops what she drops, and then Dunk's reaction to it is laughing it off. For me, not knowing some of the other stuff was kind of like, this is a really cool moment and foreshadowing. And for me, that was a really cool moment. Yeah, I think that, just to give a quick one, that was it. One of my favorites.
Well, because he's so innocent, you have a hard time believing that all that stuff could happen to him. But then you find out, who his family is, and you're like, oh yeah, I see it now.
Yeah, and I think just another shout out to the moment was the scene of him going to kill his brother once he gets better. I think that's in the final episode, he's going to basically go and like kill him, and you're seeing some of the cracks in that childish bald head, and looking at his hair and seeing the silver hair coming back in. Cool. That was definitely another cool moment.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Sean, favorite moment?
I mean, it probably sounds cheesy, but going all the way back to that first episode, for me, on-screen chemistry is so vital. It can make or break an entire scene, an entire plot line, the believability of certain characters. And I think from the moment Dunk starts having dinner in Lionel's tent to the end of their exchange in that tent is what sold me on the show. If anything, I wanted more Lionel than what we got. And I'm thrilled that Daniel Ings has a role to play in Star Wars Starfighter, which we'll talk about in a bit. And thought he was amazing as Lionel. And but the chemistry between the two, that could have been anybody else. And if there's no chemistry there, it just doesn't come off the same. So as good as Dunk and Ag are during the show, and they have chemistry too, for sure. But the chemistry between Dunk and Lionel is what did it for me.
I was literally about to ask, like, what did you make of the chemistry between our two title characters? Like, if you're so high on the Lionel Dunk uh relationship, what did you think of the Dunk and Egg paradigm?
I thought it was fantastic, but I did not think it was as good as Duncan Lytle.
That's probably a bit of a hot take, not gonna lie. That's a little bit of a steamy take, probably.
I
Because
mean, obviously, Dunk and Egg get way more screen time together, right? So, like, I think people will naturally gravitate towards them. But in terms of the chemistry that's shown on screen and like when you rate the performance while they're on screen together, I don't think it's even close, to be honest. And I think so much of it goes to Daniel Ings and his performance.
Randy, it's to you. Favorite moment.
So when it comes to the moments of the show, like a lot of them carry a similar weight. So I'm going to go a little off the beaten path and basically the end where we see Dunk and Egg riding off, but then you have Sir Arlen with them, basically in spirit, in memory, and then we see him veer off into his own path, symbolizing the growth that Dunk has had through this entire first season, and showing that he's finally let go and finally decided to take on his own path. I think that to me that the symbolism there uh, really just kind of struck a chord with me. I mean, I could easily say the fight. I could easily say any, the tug of war, or certain other moments that have happened. But for me, this one just kind of resonates more because of just how realistic it is for a lot of us in life. Finally letting go and finally deciding to choose our own path versus sticking with something that someone else has kind of preordained for us. So, and that's kind of why I'll pick that as my moment.
It felt very Lord of the Rings in nature when I first saw it. Maybe they've done certain overhead shots like that in the Lord of the Rings films, like when you're leaving the Shire or something. But I definitely got some Lord of the Rings vibes, and I got some Mandalorian vibes. The way that they wrapped up season 3, it kind of had like a similar vibe for me. But we're not talking about Mando today. Um, I'm gonna go with the cliche. I'm gonna go with the obvious answer, and that is Baylor's wound at the end of episode 5, when he starts talking about how his fingers feel like wood as they're getting ready to take his helmet off. I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good at all. And it was a very interesting look, not only into the brutality of these types of fights, but also the fact that um, Baylor wore somebody else's armor. He didn't go into this tourney thinking that he was going to need to suit up. And so he wore someone else's Targaryen armor, and it didn't fit him properly and it didn't protect him properly. And ultimately it led to his downfall. And so, um, yeah, it was tough to read in the novella. It was tough to watch transpire, but I think it's very, very important to the story and to the show because the person who was next in line for the throne that was supposed to be a good leader ended up um, not even making it out of that tournament, which was really sad. That'll bring us to favorite character, and I think Baylor was my favorite character. I think he reminded me the most of traditional Game of Thrones type characters, the ones that we would see in the original Game of Thrones, in House of the Dragon. People with good intentions who are well thought, well spoken, carry themselves well, but don't carry themselves as if they are nobility who should have everything given to them. He was a good leader, and it was tough to see him go. So I'll kick it off with Baylor as my favorite character. Dustin, did you have a favorite character from this series?
Yeah. um, I think my having watched the seasons, there was one character that kept popping up that I wanted to see more of and genuinely liked, and that was Sir Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm. Um, I really enjoyed his character, the moments that he had with Dunk, some of the stuff that he mentioned, especially the last episode, um, when he says, basically, like, come with me, and I'll love you like a brother. And he says, well, I can't go with you. And he's like, well, F you, then I'll hate you like a brother. And I just enjoyed his character, that larger than life kind of just this guy that's, it's just, he had some nobility, but he didn't let that go to his head. And he just wanted to kind of, he fought with Dunk and he didn't even think twice about it. And every time he was on screen, I enjoyed seeing him and the chemistry he had with Dunk. So I know that's an offbeat one, but I think I enjoyed every time he was on screen.
I don't think it's too offbeat considering I have like a 95% assurance that I know somebody else is going to give that same answer. That fella to your side there. How you feeling, Mr. Sean?
Baylor is my number 2. I'm glad that he was your number 1. I think your point about him being the most like a traditional Game of Thrones character is spot on. But yeah, Lionel Baratheon. Every time this guy's on the screen, he steals the show. And again, that doesn't take anything away from Dunk and Egg because I thought both were relatable, strong, good characters. So yeah, Lionel for me.
Okay. Randy, you're going to get to double up because we need to finish up. We get to finish up this discussion. So we'll do favorite character and then roll that into just final overall thoughts on the season so we can get to our other stuff. And then Sean and Dustin, y'all can go after him and I'll close this and then switch us to the next thing.
All right. Sounds good. So my favorite character was Dunk. Basically, the reason behind that is in some way, shape, or form, we were all him at some point, like having that naive outlook on life and, just always putting your best foot forward, whether you're a child or even like, those people that are always like, people pleasers are always trying to help everybody. Like there's a naivete to that Dunk brought out very well. And we got to see him grow through the season. And learning about him, I was hooked on everything Dunk. His upbringing, how he survived, it drew me in, and I felt like there were times when I could be like, I remember a time where I was like that, or I did something similar, or acted in a certain way that was very similar. And that's why I chose him as my favorite character. As for my final thoughts, I think it was a good first step into something different. I think what they did, even though they had limitations, really came across as best as it could. Obviously, based on things you've said, they followed the novella extremely well, very closely. So I think it's a good jumping off point, and I can't wait to see what happens in season 2.
I will say the biggest deviations were the flashbacks and anything involving Sir Arlen, because aside from his making the appeals to the lords to gather a sponsor, Sir Arlen doesn't get discussed all that much. So stuff involving him and stuff involving just general flashbacks were probably the two biggest deviations. Unfortunately, those are probably a bit more prominent than they should be. But yeah, everything else is pretty on the nose. Sean, final thoughts.
Solid first season. I mean, I didn't really know much about the first season going in, and I kind of want to keep it the same way for the second season. I believe what we do know is it takes place in why can I not think of the name of the place? Not Pentos. I can't think of the name of it, but I do know that they're trying to get a new filming location due to some storms that hit where they had already scheduled to film. I liked it. I enjoyed it for what it was. And I got to give them this. Unlike a lot of the Star Wars series that have come out on Disney Plus, they let you know right out of the gate that, hey, these are much shorter episodes. We're not, saying this is event television necessarily. We're not promising grand scale, and I appreciated the honesty.
Dustin, take us home before we go to our next topic.
Yeah, I think it set it up well for a second season. Although you did kind of give some information about the second season and the drought stuff, where I was kind of like, if they could turn this into something interesting, I'll be amazed. Because what you kind of said, I was like, don't know if this can keep me interested, but I'm hoping they can, and I'm going to give them that opportunity. They've earned the opportunity to try to show me that they can turn this other part of what's coming next. So I'll tune in for the next one. I'm happy to do so.
There has been some casting announcements, and that'll be what I end with my thoughts on. Lucy Boynton, Babu Cisse, and Peter Mullen have been cast as the three poignant characters that will be the largest players in season 2, and they all have various professional acting credits in Britain, whether that's on the stage or on the small screen, and so it'll be interesting to see how all of that ties together with Duncan A, because the show's supposed to be about 2 years after the events of this one, so they've been traveling and adventuring and building chemistry together, and yeah, there's opportunities to kind of build on their characters and give them new side quests and new adventures and new opportunities to build chemistry. And I think that's something I'm looking forward to the most, because they have great Comic-Con chemistry too. I saw them in a few videos at Dublin Comic-Con not too long ago, and the stories that they share together are really cute and endearing. So if you get a chance, check those out. On the topic of Aegon, he is named after a different Aegon. That is Aegon the Conqueror. And Sean, you've been keeping a lot closer tabs on this than I have. Can you please tell us like where we're at with any kind of story pertaining to Aegon the Conqueror? Because from what you've told me and from what reports you've shown us in like our group chat and such, seems like there may be a couple of different opportunities in the works, and eventually HBO is going to have to pick one of them. No.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's any world where they both happen. Doesn't sound like that's the plan at all. And they got two very talented people heading up each project for the TV series. You have Mattson Tomlin, who is the co-writer from the Batman with Matt Reeves, who's been working on it for about a year and a half. And you got to remember, with the TV series, it's going to have, this isn't like a Night of the Seven Kingdoms thing. This is a full-scale deal where it's going to you have to have more meat on the bone for a TV series than, say, a movie. And then with the movie, Will Bowman, who was one of the co-writers on Andor, is writing the movie version of it. And specifically for Andor season 2, he wrote most people's favorite arc, which was the third arc, which involved the Gorman massacre and then Mon Mothma escaping the Senate. So you got two incredibly talented individuals heading up each project, and I'm not sure which one I want to win at this point, but I will say this. Will Bowman is getting a later start than what Mattson Tomlin did.
Yeah.
And that would seem to indicate that at least the people at HBO and Warner Brothers, may prefer a movie version of this over a TV series. And I know you and I have gone on for a long time how it'd be really cool if they did a movie, if it opened with the Doom of Valeria and some of the scenes from that for fast forwarding. The only thing I worry about is this: they're talking about doing it as a Dune-sized epic. So we're not talking about like a made-for-TV movie. We're talking for a cinematic release, a big IMAX level feature. As much as I love the cast of Game of Thrones, and I do, and I like a lot of the cast for House of the Dragon, you are going to have some A-list casting to do something like Dune. You will not be able to get away with hiring a bunch of British people and hope it hits big on the big screen. That's just not how cinema works. But also, like, other than Aegon and his sister wives, I don't know who the other main players are during that time. So I don't even know. Like, obviously, there are main players. I'm saying, me personally, have not read enough into the history back then, even though I have all the material sitting in this house, um, to know what other big players there are. But I know this: you can't cast it with a bunch of unknowns. Look at what Dune did. Dune had to go star-studded. If you want to do something like that, you are going to have to spend some money on your cast.
No, I agree. And I don't think I know very many of the other big players either. I mean, I think there are Starks involved, obviously. There are probably people like Lannisters involved, people that have a lot of history within Westeros before the Targaryens invade. So there will probably be, people of that nature. But with with Balerion the Black Dread being the biggest of all the dragons, I think it's hard to not go large scale in cases like that. Either of you guys, Dustin or Randy, have some thoughts on whether a like limited series on HBO or a movie would be of greater benefit for this particular storyline?
I think it really depends on length, or how or like the type of story they want to tell. If they want to go full out epic, yeah, you could easily do a movie. But also, depending on how much information you want to uh, give or how much action you want to put into it, I guess it really depends on, do they want to go full on storyteller mode, or do they just want to give us this monstrous epic? If they're going for the monstrous epic, you just go movie and see what the demand is after that, because you never know, a movie could lead into something where someone's like, I want to know more, and maybe the fandom does that, and that's how you can lean into branching out the story to give you more in a series.
Right.
Obviously, I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying that that's the way they're going to go, but or they could just give us, just a good old fashioned Game of Thrones story in a sense, and give us a limited run series, mini series, where they're like maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours per episode, and maybe have it like a mini series would normally do. Was usually back in the day was what, three 2 hour movies or 3 and a half movies, and that was your mini series. So yeah, I mean, I'd be fine either way. I'm just really curious to see what they want to share with us in terms of the story and how big they're willing to go.
If they go movie, it's going to be a big budget. That's for sure. It's going to have to be. There's no two ways about it. So that'll definitely be interesting to see.
I guess the thing I worry about is, we all know he conquers the Seven Kingdoms, right?
Not technically.
Well, true. There's some asterisks in there, if you will. But does anyone actually stand up and have a fight against Balerion the Black Dread that is not just, Daenerys and Drogon showing up laying waste to the money cart there episode? Like, you might have to change some lore here to have something a little more interesting happen, and we all know how a certain someone feels about that.
Well, my understanding, and it's very limited, but my understanding is the only reason they win the war is because of their dragons. They don't have much of an infantry to speak of. And so when the war is being fought on multiple fronts, but the dragons are only at one battlefield, that's where the rest of Westeros is resisting the best, is in the encounters that don't involve dragons. So when it's mano a mano, they hold their own and are oftentimes winning. But then as soon as the dragons come into play, they all get burned to ash and have to surrender. So they may try to incorporate like certain fight sequences that just don't involve the dragons to show Westeros with the home field advantage, and then the dragons will swoop in, much like you said, with a very Drogon type of approach and just Dracarys the hell out of everybody. But who was it that you said had the advantage, that they'd been working on their project for about a year now? Was it the film, right? Or the TV show?
No, the TV show has been
The
going
TV
on for
show.
about a year and a half, but I would argue that just because it's been going on for a year and a half doesn't mean it has the advantage, because I think if they were confident in it going forward, and Mattson Tomlin has been done, by the way, not still actively working, done writing at least season one of, or limited series, whatever it ends up being, of that show for some time now. He posted that on social media a long while back. I'd suggest the fact that Will Bowman from Andor is now working on a film version doesn't bode well necessarily for Mattson Tomlin, but that's just me guessing.
Yeah, unless they saw what was coming out of the TV show, the limited show, and they were like, "Hey, this would actually lend itself to being a movie." And then they said, "Let's, look and see if we can get someone to do a treatment of this version for a movie." And then they pivoted a little bit to kind of see like, okay, let's figure out which is best, and then see what we're gonna do moving forward. Seeing dragons on the big screen is always cool. Just call it a Reign of Fire 2. Just have it be a soft reboot of a movie that not many people like, but I happen to have a soft spot for.
It's so slow. Don't get me wrong, the action pieces are awesome, but God bless, that movie just drags on at times.
Yeah, I just want to see Matthew McConaughey run and jump at a dragon with an axe and Christian Bale before he was
It's
super
funny
famous.
you mention that, because marketing a movie is not like marketing a TV show. And I am willing to bet dollars to donuts, if it is a movie, it will be Game of Thrones something. Remember, this is how the Iron Throne gets created.
Yeah, they would have to use that to get people in that would maybe not know a more casual fan, right? Which is, we always kind of get stuck in that rut of, we're fans, or there's hardcore fans of stuff, they're going to go see it. But what is the general audience going to see and make them say, hey, this is going to be interesting, I want to go see it? And because you got to make money, and they need to get those people too.
Yep. That's a good point. Very good point. Unfortunately, Sean, I hate to give you the talking points 2 times in a row, but this is a franchise that you're just way more familiar with than I am. Um, Apparently there's like the same conversation about benefits and pros and cons to show versus movie from another franchise that we also talk about here on the channel. Is that right?
Yeah, so Halloween is, there will be people that'll tell you, and Randy, to his credit, has been on this for well over a year. You probably ought to choose one or the other. But one of the main talking points that's coming up now amongst the Halloween fan base is, we've been waiting years for this TV show, which was officially announced, by the way. And the last update we had on that was, it may now no longer feature Michael Myers in a prominent way at all, and that there seems to be a lot of creative differences between the head of the studio that purchased the rights for it and the rights holders of the franchise itself, which is not uncommon when it comes to Halloween projects. And what I simply wanted to do is turn the tables here tonight, and this can be short, in like a minute or less. If you guys had to choose between a Halloween 50th anniversary movie or a Halloween TV series, maybe in the vein of, even though we haven't seen it yet, Crystal Lake or Welcome to Derry, which one are you choosing? The Halloween TV series or the 50th anniversary movie, if you cannot have both?
No, I think it's pretty obvious for me. I'm gonna, since we're so close to that anniversary, I'm going to go movie, just because you don't have a lot of time. You really don't. And yes, you can film it quickly and whatnot and try to turn it around, but honestly, you owe the fans something by the 50th. And I feel like a movie that, at least honors just the series as a whole and gives something good to the fans. I think that's really kind of where that needs to be. The TV series can obviously still come, but I think it needs to be after a movie.
You mentioned Welcome to Derry, and I had a freaking blast with Welcome to Derry. I did not think I was going to have very high expectations for that show, and I did end up really, really enjoying myself. The expectations continued to climb the more they were surpassed, and they kept getting met. So if it can be the caliber of something like Welcome to Derry, I'd be fine with a TV series. I think being able to provide depth and story and backstory and context clues and lore and all these things are very good and very important. But you have to do it right. And Welcome to Derry did it right. And I'd be curious to see if it can be done rightly with a Halloween franchise. History would suggest maybe that's not a realistic hope, but Welcome to Derry kind of broke the mold and kind of changed my mind for me a little bit. So I'd be interested to see if they could do that for Halloween as well.
Yeah, for me, I think it's 100% movie. I just the source material for that they have, unless they're gonna go crazy, is doesn't lend itself to a show, in my opinion. Just they could do it, yes, but I don't think that's. I think for the 50th, you need to have a movie, and then it becomes the same question of what the hell do you do, and what path are they going to take? I think that is the most interesting part. Are they going to do a reboot? Are they, which they can do? Um, are they going to go and say, okay, we're going to use the first movie the same way, all of them have, and we're going to do an offshoot and say, okay, alternate timeline again? They could do that. It would be hard again to market that to people to say like, oh, okay, well the first movie takes place and that's canon. Then we go in this different direction that's different than Halloween 2018, and this is just an alternate pathway, an alternate universe of things that happened. What happened after that night? Set in a period piece, cool. Or they do a something tied to four or H2O. So just please no Lori. That's my only ask is please, for the love of God, no Lori, and that's all. That's all I'm asking. Just no Lori. We're done with that. We don't need her getting chased down in a walker. It's getting ridiculous. So, but yeah, I think absolutely a movie is the way to go.
Yeah, I think if you would have asked me this question 18 months ago, I would have been firmly with the TV show. But knowing between the changeover in Miramax leadership, in terms of their television department, and now, at least for the sources that we have, suggesting that there's significant creative differences between Miramax and Trancas, that's enough for me to go, yeah, this sounds like one of the bad Halloween movies again, and I don't have interest in revisiting one of them again. So, give me a TV show at this point, where Trancas has more control over what's going on. Although, here's where it gets messy, people, and it's where entertainment rights really becomes a problem, and it's the fan that loses out at the end. So, well, Miramax Television and Miramax like films are two different companies, um, at least two different divisions within the same company. The problem with it is this. I apologize if you guys hear background noise. I'm letting my dog out. He couldn't wait any longer.
Who let the dogs out? Who?
The problem becomes, uh, is Miramax is the co-owners of the film rights as well. Now they don't have the same level of power as a Trancas does, but they can certainly interrupt things. So if Trancas isn't liking what Miramax is trying to do with the TV show, just out of spite, Miramax can hold up what's going on with the movie. And if you would have asked me again 18 months ago, my answer would have been I think you're going to have the TV series by 2026, 2027. You'll have your 50th anniversary movie they've been talking about behind the scenes by obviously 2028. Now, I can't believe we're here. There's a legitimate chance neither happens, and strictly out of spite. And before people say, well, it doesn't make sense not to go and make money when you can make money, why don't you ask the Friday the 13th franchise how well that's gone for them?
Or maybe the Scream franchise?
I don't think rights have ever been an issue there, but Friday the 13th has been without a film since 2009, and all because two parties don't want to work together who co-own the rights.
Oh, I guess I just meant like in the context of like making a movie for movie's sake. But yeah.
Well then, yeah, you could do that too. But it's a pretty bleak time outside of the video game that's coming out to be a Halloween fan, because this could go on for a long time if cooler heads don't prevail. And at the moment, it would certainly seem like cooler heads are not prevailing.
That's unfortunate. That is very unfortunate. Because I know I'm not as well versed in the franchise as a lot of other people on the channel are, but I never actively look for a franchise to suffer. You know, I never wish ill on a franchise or its fan base, and yet it seems like the ownership is doing just that at a very poor time.
Yeah, I mean, you're coming off of 3 movies that are, the first one was incredibly well received and is the most successful Halloween movie of all time. The second one was a little bit divisive with some of its, social talk, but the last one was just fucking downright abysmal, and most of the fans hated it. But at the end of the day, those 3 movies together made more money than the other 10 movies released in total by a pretty significant margin. And so the time to capitalize should be now, and it's going by the wayside.
I think I muted myself when I was trying to unmute myself. My bad. Do we have time for our last topic, or do we need to start saying our goodbyes, Sean?
I would just start saying the goodbyes. We'll cover Star Wars next week.
There's always time to cover Star Wars. That's the brilliant thing about that galaxy far, far away is there's always something going on and always something from it to talk about. So that'll be our teaser for next week then, and it does relate to our big topic tonight. And a couple of people's favorite character is now a part of Starfighter. So if you want to hear some of Daniel Ings' thoughts on that movie that's currently in production that he's a part of, be sure to tune in to next week's episode. But per the director, the host has got to start shutting things down. So Randy, thanks for hopping on tonight. Hopefully it provided a little bit of decent distraction for you.
Yeah, it definitely did. Like I said, I always enjoy getting on here after a long ass day, and yeah, it's always a lot of fun, man.
Dustin, hopefully this made your Monday a little better as well.
It always does. Glad to be here, guys. It was great.
I'm gonna be gone for our spring break here in the States, but I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Johnny should be here next week, right, Sean?
You never know with him, but hopefully.
It's a solid maybe. We'll find out next week, and you will too. But
he might be watching Scream 7 on repeat viewing, so
in his penthouse, no less.
That doesn't sound like Johnny at all, but that's funny. It's funny to think about. But that is going to do it for us here on this episode of House of the Empire. For Randy and Sean and Dustin, I'm Zach. Thanking you for tuning in, and we'll see you all next